early on the Wednesday morning between the death and the funeral. And I just sat down and wrote it. And it took about an hour and a half and just came pouring out, really. Actually, it's interesting. Sounds rather sort of bizarre, but I did go to Diana's coffin the day after I'd written it, and I read it to her in there. And I did sort of feel a sort of positive energy come through that somehow she approved of what I was going to say.
Well, for me, all the things that come from children who've obviously spent hours of work on paintings, pictures, cards, anything like that, and things they've baked at home. It's wonderful.
Baked?
Oh, yes.
Have you had cakes?
Yes. There's so many Smarties, you can hardly see them what it is.
The night before one of the most watched funerals in modern history, Charles Spencer walked alone to his sister's coffin, unfolded a eulogy he had finished just hours earlier, and read it out loud to Diana herself. Not for a crowd, not for cameras, for Diana. Charles later revealed that he went to her after writing the speech and read every word. Picture that for a moment. A brother practicing what would become one of the most talked about speeches in royal history to the one person who could never respond. Nearly 30 years later, that same man reportedly looked at a documentary proposal linked to Netflix, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and reacted with just 4 words: "Is this a joke?"
It's such an amputation. It's like the other guys were saying, you grow up with these people, they are your flesh and blood, they're with you forever, and then they're gone. And yes, you expect, obviously, first grandparents, then parents to go, and there's the awful tragedy you mentioned of children going.
Those 4 words sparked major attention and raised serious questions. Tonight, we'll break down why that response may have hit harder than anything coming from King Charles or Prince William. By the end, you'll have 3 key answers. First, what was inside the proposal that reportedly made Diana's brother reject it so quickly? The request involved personal items, family history, and deeply private material. Second, we'll uncover the personal burden Charles Spencer is said to have carried for years, a lingering wound that may explain why this proposal struck such a nerve. And third, there's the quiet letter Charles Spencer is said to have written afterward, not to Harry, not to Meghan, but to Prince William. Royal insiders describe it as a message built on strategy, not emotion, and some believe it could reshape the lines of this ongoing family conflict. 3 questions, 3 answers. Every one of them will be uncovered before this story is over. But first, you need to understand who Charles Spencer really is. He has spent so many years out of the spotlight that many people forget how influential he remains. At 62, he is Diana's younger brother and the 9th Earl Spencer, leading a family whose history stretches back more than 500 years. Most people remember him for one unforgettable day in September 1997.
Actually, as your family naturally folds in on itself, you lose your parents. I have 2 sisters who I adore. They're quite a lot older than me. So I don't share my childhood with anyone anymore. And that's a great loss that you can never really put right.
Standing in Westminster Abbey before a worldwide audience, he delivered a speech that shocked millions. In a setting where few challenged the royal establishment, Spencer spoke with unusual force and conviction. He pledged, on behalf of Diana's family, that William and Harry would be raised with warmth, freedom, and imagination. He also vowed to protect them from the pressures and scrutiny that had followed Diana throughout her life. The public reaction was enormous, with applause echoing far beyond the Abbey walls. What many forget is that the speech was more than a farewell. It was a promise. And according to those who have followed his actions since, Charles Spencer has spent years trying to honor it. The first major clue came with Diana's burial. Many expected royal traditions to decide everything. Instead, events took a very different path, and that decision revealed far more than most people realized. The reality was very different. Diana was laid to rest at Althorpe, the Spencer family estate in Northamptonshire, the place where she grew up, rode horses, and spent her early years. Her family's connection to that land stretches back more than 500 years. Put simply, her brother made sure Diana remained with her family. The royal family held the funeral, but the Spencers kept control of her final resting place. From that moment on, anyone seeking access to Diana's private world, her letters, family, footage, and personal history, had to go through one person, Charles Spencer. That made him the gatekeeper of a legacy unlike any other. Think of Diana's story as a museum. The public has access to the famous photos, the headlines, the iconic outfits, and the clips that have been shown countless times. Those pieces are everywhere. But the deeply personal items, the handwritten notes, unedited home movies, childhood spaces, and private family records are different. Those remain under the Amidon's care of a single family custodian who decides what is shared and what stays private. Most documentaries about Diana have relied on material already available to the public. The most personal pieces have rarely left that collection.
Do you have any thoughts about the lady that the Prince of Wales should marry?
Yes. Well, I suppose, you see, it's really difficult because you've got to remember that when you marry, in my position, you're going to marry somebody who perhaps one day is going to become queen. And you've got to choose somebody very carefully, I think. And it's got to be somebody pretty special, because if you choose somebody who isn't used to it.
So ask yourself, what would it take for Charles Spencer to open those doors? How much trust would he need? What assurances would convince him that Diana's memory was being respected rather than turned into content? Keep those questions in mind, because the people who came asking were about to face that test themselves. Then came the people walking up the drive. It started with something that seemed small and harmless: jewellery. At the royal wedding reception in 2018, Meghan Markle wore Diana's famous aquamarine ring, a striking blue stone recognised around the world. At first, that may have felt meaningful to Charles Spencer, a new family member, loved by his nephew, honouring Diana on such an important day. It looked like a tribute. It looked like family. Then came the butterfly earrings, the Cartier watch, the gold bracelets. One by one, items linked to Diana appeared at highly visible events where cameras were guaranteed to be watching. To be fair, nobody can know the intentions behind those choices. Family memories are personal, and people express connection in different ways. But many observers noticed a pattern. Again and again, major public moments seemed to include something connected to Diana. The comparisons became impossible for many people to ignore. What started as a tribute began, in the eyes of some critics, to look more deliberate. Keep one word in mind: strategy. Because the jewellery was only the beginning. The next chapter is where things reportedly became far more complicated. In March 2021 came the Oprah interview, an event that dominated headlines across the globe. Most people remember the interview itself, but imagine it from the perspective of Charles Spencer, watching from Althorpe, the home that holds so much of Diana's history. According to reports, that moment carried a very different weight for him. After the broadcast aired, critics examined it closely, looking at every detail. Many argued that the presentation felt carefully designed rather than accidental. The lighting was warm and subdued. The setting felt private and personal. The story centered on a woman describing struggles inside a powerful institution and speaking openly about feeling unheard and isolated. For longtime royal watchers, the similarities to Diana's famous 1995 Panorama interview quickly became a major topic of discussion. Some observers felt the overall style, tone, and structure echoed that earlier broadcast in striking ways. The comparisons kept growing. A royal family member speaking directly to the public, a trusted interviewer asking questions, an institution portrayed as distant and unresponsive. To critics, the parallels were difficult to ignore. Reports suggest Charles Spencer did not view those similarities as a tribute, and when you consider his well-known concerns about the Panorama interview and its aftermath, that reaction becomes easier to understand. Look at the two events side by side. In 1995, Diana spoke publicly about her experiences within the royal system. In 2021, Meghan shared her own account of life inside that same institution. Both interviews focused on personal struggles, public scrutiny, and feelings of isolation. But there was one major difference that stood out to many observers. Diana gave her interview while still living within the royal structure. The 2021 interview took place after Harry and Meghan had stepped away from royal duties and started a new life in California. To many observers, the difference between the two interviews was significant. Diana's appearance was widely seen as a plea from someone still inside the system. The 2021 interview, critics argued, marked the beginning of a new public chapter for Harry and Meghan. Then came the Netflix projects, documentary appearances, and direct-to-camera storytelling. A central theme emerged: a couple who felt forced to leave royal life while facing intense media attention and institutional pressure. Many commentators drew connections to Diana's experience. The message some viewers took away was clear. History seemed to be repeating itself, only with a different generation at the center of the story. As storytelling, it resonated with millions. As a media strategy, it generated enormous global attention. But for someone like Charles Spencer, who witnessed Diana's struggles firsthand and has long criticized the way parts of the media treated her, those comparisons may have felt very different. The jewelry could be seen as a tribute. The repeated parallels, some argue, felt like something else entirely. One way to understand the debate is to look beyond emotion and focus on public image. After stepping back from royal duties, Harry and Meghan needed to build a new media identity. For many observers, Diana's legacy remained one of the most powerful and recognizable connections available to them. But there was one important factor. Much of Diana's personal archive, history, and family legacy remains under the control of Charles Spencer and the Spencer family. Critics of the Sussexes argue that references to Diana became a recurring part of their public narrative. Supporters see those references as natural and personal. Either way, one question remained unanswered. What would happen if they eventually needed access to the private materials controlled by the man guarding Diana's legacy? That question was about to become very important. By early 2026, reports and speculation around Harry and Meghan's media future were growing. The Spotify deal was over, their lifestyle brand faced questions about momentum, and many commentators believed a major new project would be needed to regain attention and strengthen existing partnerships. According to reports, one idea began gaining traction, a large-scale documentary marking 30 years since Diana's death in 2027. The concept was powerful on paper, a deeply emotional film centered on Diana's life, legacy, and lasting impact, with Prince Harry playing a key role. Industry observers claimed the proposal attracted serious interest, but one reported element made it especially controversial. Sources alleged that the project aimed to draw strong parallels between Diana's experiences and Meghan's own public struggles. Critics viewed this as an attempt to place both women within the same narrative, presenting Meghan as a modern figure facing similar pressures and scrutiny. Whether people agreed with that comparison or not, there was a major obstacle. The project reportedly depended on the cooperation of one person, Charles Spencer. And that brings us back to the first question raised earlier. According to reports, the proposal called for access to assets that are rarely made available. That allegedly included Althorpe House itself, the estate where Diana grew up, the grounds surrounding it, and areas connected to her memory. Even more significantly, reports claimed the project sought access to private family archives, and possibly some of Diana's personal writings and records, materials that remain under the control of the Spencer family. According to reports, the proposal also sought access to home movies and private family footage that have never been released publicly. These materials, if they exist in the form described, would offer a far more personal look at Diana than the images and clips that have appeared in countless documentaries over the years. Without that access, the project would rely largely on already familiar material. With it, supporters believed the documentary could become one of the most significant Diana projects ever produced. The challenge was obvious. Nearly everything being requested was controlled by one person, Charles Spencer. Reports suggest the proposal was presented with confidence. From the outside, it could be seen as a major tribute to Diana's life, backed by substantial resources and global reach. Some may have assumed Spencer would welcome the opportunity, but according to accounts of the situation, that was not his reaction. Sources claim that when Spencer reviewed the concept, he focused on how Diana's story would be used and who would ultimately benefit from the project. It was at that point that he reportedly delivered the response that quickly spread through royal circles. Is this a joke? Whether those exact words were spoken as reported or not, the message was clear. The proposal was not moving forward. Without Spencer's approval, access to key locations, private archives, and personal family materials reportedly remained off-limits. The project suddenly faced a major obstacle. That leads to the next question. Why has Charles Spencer remained so protective of Diana's private archive for so many years? The answer, according to many observers, goes far deeper than simple family loyalty. According to long-standing reports, one reason Charles Spencer is so protective of Diana's legacy may be tied to a deep personal burden. The issue centers on his connection to Martin Bashir, the journalist behind the famous 1995 Panorama interview. Years later, investigations concluded that Bashir used deceptive methods, including forged documents, to gain access and build trust. Those findings dramatically changed how many people viewed the interview and the circumstances surrounding it. At the time, Diana was dealing with intense public pressure and personal difficulties. The later revelations suggested that misinformation may have played a role in influencing key decisions that led to the broadcast. Reports have long claimed that Charles Spencer felt troubled after learning the full details. If true, the realization would have been difficult. An introduction made in good faith had become linked to an interview that remains one of the most controversial moments in royal history. Imagine carrying that knowledge for years. You believe you were helping someone you cared about, only to discover that the situation was far more complicated than it appeared. For many observers, that experience helps explain why Spencer became increasingly cautious about who receives access to Diana's private world. Since then, he has consistently resisted efforts to open large portions of the family archive. Private writings, personal footage, and other materials have remained largely unavailable to the public. Supporters view that approach as an effort to protect Diana's dignity and prevent her story from being reshaped for commercial purposes. As a result, something unusual has happened. Despite decades of media coverage, parts of Diana's life remain unseen and unknown. In an age where nearly everything becomes public, a significant portion of her personal history has stayed private. Now consider the situation from Spencer's perspective. For years, he has guarded those materials, declined numerous requests, and watched the continuing public fascination with Diana. Then a proposal arrives asking for access to some of the most private pieces of that legacy. Viewed through that lens, his reported reaction becomes much easier to understand. Now imagine the situation from Charles Spencer's point of view. A proposal arrives, requesting access to Diana's handwritten diaries, private home movies from Althorp, and deeply personal family material connected to her life and memory. According to reports, the project would not simply focus on Diana herself. Critics believed it also aimed to connect her story to Meghan Markle's experiences, creating a broader narrative that linked the two women. If Spencer viewed the proposal that way, it is easy to see why he may have had concerns. For decades, he has guarded these materials and resisted requests from media organizations, publishers, and filmmakers. The idea of opening that archive for such a high-profile production would have carried enormous weight. Supporters of the project might see it as a tribute. Skeptics might see it as something different. Either way, the stakes were significant because Diana's private records remain among the most sought-after pieces of royal history. This is also where the business side enters the picture. Major documentaries can attract huge audiences, and Diana's story continues to generate worldwide interest decades later. That reality inevitably raises questions about how personal history should be presented and who gets to tell it. For many observers, Spencer's reported response reflected years of caution shaped by past experiences. At the same time, speculation about the Sussexes' media future was growing. Attention turned to their major streaming partnerships and whether new projects could maintain momentum. By early 2026, commentators were closely watching the state of their media ventures, and some believed the pressure to deliver another major success was increasing rapidly. The reviews quickly became a major part of the story. The Evening Standard awarded the series 4 stars, but even its review included moments of criticism. The Times was far less enthusiastic, giving it 2 stars and describing it as surreally dull. The Daily Telegraph also handed out 2 stars, arguing that the show focused heavily on luxury lifestyles, celebrity connections, and brand promotion. Then came The Guardian, a review that caught many people's attention. This is important because The Guardian has often published criticism of the monarchy and has frequently been sympathetic to Meghan's complaints about royal life. Many observers assumed it would be among the friendliest outlets covering the series. Instead, the paper gave it 1 star and described it as toe-curlingly unlovable TV. One writer even questioned whether it could end up being Meghan's final Netflix project. Meanwhile, a television editor at Hello magazine reportedly admitted she struggled to identify the show's intended audience. When publications with very different viewpoints reach similar conclusions, people start paying attention. At that point, the conversation moves beyond politics and becomes a discussion about the product itself. What made the reaction especially notable was where some of the toughest criticism came from. It was not only traditional royal commentators raising concerns. Some of the sharpest reviews appeared in outlets that had often been supportive of Meghan in the past. For critics, that suggested a deeper problem. If even audiences and commentators generally sympathetic to her perspective were unimpressed, the challenge facing the project became much harder to dismiss. A negative review from critics is nothing unusual, but when criticism comes from outlets that are normally supportive, many people see that as a stronger signal. One fact stands out above all the others. Harry and Meghan remains one of Netflix's biggest documentary debuts. For many analysts, that detail helps explain much of what followed. The contrast is hard to ignore. While Harry and Meghan attracted enormous attention, later projects such as Heart of Invictus, Polo, and With Love, Meghan generated a much more mixed response from both critics and audiences. Looking at those results side by side, some commentators reached a simple conclusion. Projects tied directly to royal life, family conflict, and Diana's legacy appeared to attract far more interest than lifestyle-focused content. That observation fueled growing debate about what audiences actually wanted from the Sussex brand. Critics argued that public fascination remained strongest when the conversation centered on the monarchy and its most famous figures. This is also why reports about a Diana documentary attracted so much attention. To skeptics, it looked like a return to the subject matter that had previously delivered the couple's biggest media success. Meanwhile, questions continued to surround the future of the Netflix partnership. Various reports suggested the original deal was approaching a key decision point, while other reports claimed discussions about future projects were still ongoing. Because of those conflicting accounts, the exact situation remained unclear. What was clear, however, was that the performance of recent projects was being closely watched. Commentators repeatedly noted that losing a major streaming partner would be a significant setback. As a result, every new release carried extra weight. From a business perspective, the pressure was obvious. A second season had already been produced and was heading toward release. At the same time, questions about future agreements remained unresolved. In that environment, reviews, audience numbers, and public interest suddenly became more important than ever. If future projects failed to connect with audiences, the consequences could be significant. Media partnerships depend on performance, and every release adds to the overall picture. That is why many commentators viewed the reported Diana documentary proposal as far more than just another project. To supporters, it may have looked like an ambitious tribute. To critics, it appeared to be the strongest possible play for global attention, a story built around one of the most powerful and enduring figures in modern royal history. That is what made Charles Spencer's reported rejection so important. If the accounts are accurate, the proposal lost access to the very elements that could have made it unique: the private archives, family materials, and locations connected directly to Diana's life. Viewed through that lens, the project starts to look less like a side venture and more like a major opportunity that suddenly disappeared. That brings us to the third question: the reported connection between Charles Spencer and Prince William. According to royal commentators, William has long been protective of his mother's legacy. However, as heir to the throne, his position is complicated. Any direct attempt to challenge a project involving his brother could create headlines about royal conflict, censorship, or institutional interference. That is where Spencer's role becomes especially interesting. When the palace acts, critics often frame it as the institution defending itself. But when Diana's brother takes a stand, the public may see it differently. Spencer is not speaking as a future monarch or royal official. He is speaking as family. For some royal observers, that distinction matters. A decision coming from the man who has spent decades guarding Diana's memory carries a different kind of weight, and one that may be harder for critics to dismiss as palace politics alone. For many royal observers, Charles Spencer occupies a unique position. Unlike the palace, he is not acting as part of an institution. Unlike William or Harry, he is not caught between royal duty and family conflict. That gives his decisions a different kind of credibility in the eyes of the public. Some commentators argue that this is what makes his reported rejection so powerful. There is no palace policy to blame and no official royal strategy to debate. It is simply the judgment of Diana's brother, the person who has spent decades protecting her legacy. In that sense, Spencer is often compared to a trusted intermediary. In diplomacy, sensitive messages are sometimes carried through respected figures who hold influence but no formal office. They can say things that official leaders cannot say publicly without creating larger problems. According to some royal analysts, Spencer now occupies a similar role within the wider royal story. He has family ties to both William and Harry, a strong public profile, and a long-standing connection to Diana's memory, all without holding any constitutional position. Viewed this way, his influence can be significant even when he says very little. That perspective also helps explain reports of another surprising development. According to royal insiders, Spencer is said to have contacted Prince William regarding the continuing tensions surrounding Prince Harry and the wider royal family. The reported purpose was not necessarily reconciliation. Instead, sources claimed the focus was on stability, public perception, and the long-term reputation of the monarchy. It is important to note that the specific contents of any such communication have not been publicly verified. However, reports suggest concerns were raised about how the ongoing conflict is being viewed around the world and whether continued silence remains the best approach. For commentators following the story, the key point is simple. If these reports are accurate, Spencer's involvement may extend beyond protecting Diana's legacy and into broader questions about the future direction of the royal family itself. According to reports, Charles Spencer expressed concern that Prince Harry's public image has changed dramatically over the years. Some commentators argue that Harry is now often portrayed less as a senior royal figure and more as an independent outsider, a perception that has become increasingly difficult to reverse. Sources also claim Spencer questioned whether the royal family's strategy of remaining largely silent has been effective. The argument, as reported, was that silence can leave others free to shape the public narrative without challenge. If those accounts are accurate, the situation marks a remarkable shift. Diana's brother, who famously criticized the royal establishment in 1997, is now reportedly focused on protecting the monarchy's public standing. For many observers, that highlights just how much family dynamics have changed over the past 3 decades. Naturally, public opinion remains divided. Those who support William, and often Spencer as well, argue that Diana's legacy should be handled with extreme care. From this perspective, another major documentary risks turning a deeply personal family history into a commercial product. Supporters of this view believe significant anniversaries should be approached with reflection rather than media spectacle. On the other side are Harry's supporters, who make a very different argument. They point out that Diana was Harry's mother as much as William's. From their perspective, Harry has every right to share his memories, experiences, and understanding of her life. They argue that his first-hand perspective on grief, media pressure, and growing up in the royal spotlight adds something valuable that few others can offer. That disagreement sits at the heart of the debate. Is the issue about protecting Diana's legacy, or about who has the right to tell her story? Depending on whom you ask, the answer is very different. The reality is probably more complicated than either side likes to admit. Major documentaries are not created by one person alone. They involve producers, researchers, writers, executives, and countless decisions made behind the scenes. Large media projects are rarely as simple as they appear. Before choosing a side, it is worth considering both perspectives. Imagine being William and watching one of the most painful chapters of your childhood become the subject of another major media production. Now imagine being Harry and feeling that your own memories of your mother are being questioned or restricted. Both viewpoints carry real emotion. Both come from personal experiences. That is part of what makes this debate so difficult and so deeply personal. For many observers, the real tension is not simply between two brothers. It is the challenge of balancing private grief with public interest, especially when global media companies, public figures, and commercial opportunities become involved. In the modern celebrity world, perception can become almost as powerful as fact. Every report, rumor, and headline adds another layer to an already complicated story, and that is why emotions remain so intense. At the center of all this is Diana herself, a figure whose impact extended far beyond royal headlines. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, she became known for bringing attention to issues many people preferred to ignore. She visited hospitals, charities, care facilities, and organizations supporting people affected by HIV and AIDS at a time when stigma and fear were widespread. Her willingness to engage directly with those communities helped change public attitudes and drew international attention to important causes. Just as importantly, she often brought William and Harry with her. She wanted them to see life beyond palace walls and understand the responsibilities that come with privilege. That legacy remains powerful today. It is a legacy both brothers value, both brothers claim, and one that continues to shape the debate surrounding Diana's memory decades later. That is why nearly every book, documentary, or interview connected to Diana sparks intense debate. For many people, she represents far more than a royal figure. Her legacy carries emotional weight that still resonates decades later. That brings us to Prince Harry and the family he left behind. After stepping back from royal duties, Harry released Spare in January 2023. The memoir became one of the fastest-selling non-fiction books ever published and generated headlines around the world. In its pages, Harry spoke openly about his relationships with King Charles, Prince William, and the challenges that surrounded his life within the royal family. Since leaving royal duties, Harry and Meghan have made only a limited number of visits to the United Kingdom. Yet questions about a possible reconciliation have never disappeared. Recent reports suggest there may be some openness to dialogue between Harry and the royal family. However, those same reports claim that trust remains a major obstacle. According to various insiders quoted in media coverage, concerns within royal circles are less about public disagreements and more about whether private conversations could eventually become public. These reports have fueled ongoing speculation about how difficult rebuilding relationships may be. Some reports have even suggested that future visits could involve Harry traveling to the UK on his own, though such claims remain unconfirmed. Meanwhile, King Charles has largely avoided commenting publicly on the situation. At the same time, reports indicate that Harry has expressed a willingness to improve communication and increase transparency regarding family contact and future visits. Whether those efforts lead anywhere remains uncertain. The gap between the two sides has existed for years, and repairing it would likely require more than a single meeting or conversation. For now, trust appears to remain the central issue, a word that continues to surface whenever discussion turns to the future of the royal family and the possibility of reconciliation. So let's close the loops exactly as promised. First, look at the pattern. In 2018, Meghan wore Diana's aquamarine ring at the wedding reception. Then came the butterfly earrings, the Cartier tank watch, and the gold bracelets, each appearing at major public moments captured by cameras around the world. In 2021 came the Oprah interview, which many critics compared to Diana's famous television appearance because of its style, themes, and presentation. Then followed the Netflix documentary series, where supporters saw a personal story and critics saw repeated parallels to Diana's struggles. Finally came the reported 2026 proposal, seeking access to Althorp, private archives, personal writings, and unseen family footage. Loop 1. What was in the pitch? According to reports, it was a major documentary planned for the 30th anniversary of Diana's death in 2027. The proposal allegedly requested access to Althorp, private archives, handwritten materials, and rare family footage. Critics believed the project would heavily connect Diana's story with Meghan's own public journey. Loop 2. Why did Charles Spencer say no? Many observers believe the answer goes back to the Panorama controversy. After the revelations surrounding Martin Bashir's methods, Spencer reportedly became even more determined to protect Diana's private legacy. From that point on, access to personal materials remained tightly controlled. Loop 3. The reported letter. According to royal insiders, Spencer's concerns extended beyond a documentary. Reports claim he urged Prince William to think about the monarchy's public image and the ongoing battle for control of the narrative surrounding the royal family. And that leaves one final question. Was Charles Spencer right to keep those doors closed? Or should Harry have greater access to tell his mother's story in his own way? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I read your thoughts, and I'm always interested to see where people stand on stories like this. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future updates. And while you're down in the comments, tell me, was Charles Spencer right to say no? Until next time, stay tuned, because this story may be far from over.